Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to Chapter 1, Human Digestive Book in Detail. In our previous video, what is the stomach? It is a main organ of the human digestive system. The stomach is J-shaped, and inside a human, it is in the abdominal cavity. The abdominal cavity, on its left side, just below the diaphragm. What is the diaphragm? It is a dome-shaped muscular partition that separates it from the thoracic cavity. So, the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscular partition. On its left side, our stomach is present. The part of the stomach that is at the very end of the esophagus, which is the food pipe, is called the cardiac end. While the other part, which is connected to the small intestine, is called the pyloric end. You can also see in the diagram that the food pipe, the esophagus, is coming down. The portion of the esophagus connected to the stomach is its cardiac end, while the other portion of the stomach attached to the small intestine, what is it called? We call it the pyloric end. Now, sphincters are present here. You can say a sphincter is a valve that is present there. You can understand this with a common example. Consider the taps in our homes, or the valve attached to a water pipe. You can think of it in the same way. When you close it, the water stops flowing, and when you open it, the water comes through. So, what is the cardiac sphincter? The cardiac sphincter is a ring of muscles, which is present exactly at the valve between the esophagus and the stomach, and we call that the cardiac sphincter, whereas the valve, the sphincter, the ring of muscles that is attached between the stomach and the intestine, is what we call the pyloric sphincter. Now, students, if we talk about the function of the cardiac sphincter, the function of the cardiac sphincter is that it allows the food that has been chewed in the esophagus to enter the stomach, opening up so the chewed food can pass through, and then it closes the valve tightly. The sphincter, the cardiac sphincter, that valve closes tightly so that the highly acidic stomach contents, because as soon as the food passes from the esophagus and reaches the stomach, as we will study further, that enzymes are released there, hydrochloric acid is released which helps in digesting the food, so that these highly acidic stomach contents do not splash back into the esophagus. You may have sometimes noticed that if we lie down immediately after eating, the food flashes back into our esophagus, and it really irritates our throat. It irritates because our esophagus, the food pipe, does not have a protective layer of mucus, and the food that has gone into the stomach and mixed with HCl, when it flashes back into our esophagus, it causes a burning sensation and we feel a burn. That is why the cardiac sphincter is present here. As soon as the chewed food enters the stomach from the esophagus, it closes tightly so that the food does not flash back. Similarly, the second one is the pyloric sphincter. It is present between the stomach and the small intestine. So, inside the stomach, it slowly releases food from the stomach toward the small intestine. That is why the pyloric sphincter is present between the stomach and the small intestine. Why is this muscular valve present? This ring-shaped structure is present to ensure that the intestinal contents do not reach back into the stomach, and it closes so that the food that has now entered the intestinal contents, does not return to the stomach. Students, the stomach is responsible for mechanical digestion and partially for chemical digestion within it. You know that chemicals are released here, and the walls of the stomach are made up of smooth muscles. As soon as food enters the stomach, those muscles start to contract continuously and rapidly. They contract so that with the help of this contraction, food breakdown occurs, which we also call churning, and heat is produced in this process, which also helps in digesting the food, and the lipids in the food melt. Many gastric glands are present in the inner wall of the stomach that produce gastric juice, and in this content, This gastric juice mainly consists of hydrochloric acid, and the inactive enzyme, pepsinogen, is released in this inactive form. The hydrochloric acid released by the gastric glands in the stomach wall converts pepsinogen from its inactive form into its active form. Because pepsinogen is released in an inactive state, it activates it into the pepsin enzyme, and then the pepsin enzyme breaks down larger proteins into smaller particles, which we call amino acids and peptides. So, hydrochloric acid also helps in dealing with pathogenic bacteria. Those that are present in the food are also helped to be killed by it. Now, students, the surprising thing here is that the acid being released inside the stomach, why does it not harm the stomach itself? Or why doesn't the stomach itself dissolve within it? Because the HCl that the stomach produces is so strong that if any metal is thrown into it, it even dissolves that. Why does it not harm the stomach? The reason is that there is a layer of mucus inside the stomach that protects it. And when we eat very spicy food, add too many spices to our food, or consume a lot of cold drinks, that mucus layer inside the stomach begins to get damaged, which can lead to ulcers or sores in the stomach, causing food, even normal, non-spicy food, to irritate the stomach. And you know that the stomach, if God forbid, that ulcer can even turn into cancer. So, this protective layer of mucus along the inner walls of the stomach neutralizes the acidity of the HCl, preventing pepsinogen from activating there, and thus the walls do not break down, keeping the stomach protected. Food usually stays in the stomach for about 3 to 4 hours. Because of these actions within the stomach, all the chemical digestion, and the contractions of the stomach walls, the food takes on the form of a soup-like mixture that we call chyme. The pyloric sphincter, whose function we mentioned earlier, is a sphincter located between the stomach and the intestine that prevents this chyme from flowing back into the stomach. It stops the chyme, this soup-like material, from re-entering the stomach. Therefore, the pyloric sphincter opens periodically, and 5 to 15 milliliters of chyme, a soup-like mixture, moves from the stomach into the small intestine. In the diagram, you can also see the structure of the stomach, and this is its cardiac end. We have also studied that the cardiac end, which connects the esophagus to the stomach, is the cardiac end, and the cardiac sphincter is present there. And the end that connects the stomach to the small intestine is called the pyloric end, and there is a ring of muscles present here, a valve, which is called the pyloric sphincter. If we zoom in further, many glands are present here. There are mucus-secreting cells that keep producing mucus. Cells that secrete HCl are present, and there are also pepsinogen-secreting cells. I hope, students, that you have understood the topic of the stomach very well. This is an important topic regarding long questions, so you must learn it very well. I hope that your concept has